Hello, I am Toby Praise and this is my presentation on my dissertation project. The title of my dissertation is How Much Do Players Learn from Environmental Storytelling? This is the order of the events in this presentation. According to Owen, environmental storytelling is the use of objects in a game's environment to tell a story. I chose this topic as I wish to go into the game design and narrative design spheres of game creation, and environmental storytelling is one of the ways that these practices interconnect. When conducting preliminary research on the topic, I noticed that there are very few academic resources in relation to game design. This is also discussed by Owen in his master's thesis. In relation to environmental storytelling, there are even fewer resources, with only one academic paper being found. This paper, Owen 2011, provides definitions for taxonomies within environmental storytelling, but offers no further insight into effectiveness or how to best use this technique. This dissertation looks to increase the amount of academic research into game design and to provide useful information to game designers on how to portray the information about a story within their games to ensure players can understand it. The main body of the literature review focused on understanding the research that had already been conducted in reference to games. The literature review was split into 7 sections to help focus the research. The first stage was to understand the basics of video game creation, specifically game design and level design. The key findings here are that games are defined as a form of play that includes a goal that is achievable by acting in accordance with a set of rules. This definition is stated by Adams and is the most relevant definitions found when looking at the state of modern games. The research into level design indicated that game designers should focus more on world coherency before moment-to-moment gameplay. The next stage of research was to look at visual learning and information portrayal. Visual learning is key to game design, as most video games are a visual-heavy form of media. Through the research, it is demonstrated that pattern recognition is vitally important for memory, and so information should be repeated to allow the brain to recognize it as a pattern and more easily store it. Information portrayal discusses the way that information is presented to the player. This can be as in-game elements such as books or signposts, or as external game elements such as menus or heads-up displays. Narrative design and world building are also important techniques to look at. The main takeaway from researching narrative design is that games should actually be designed to allow players to actively play through big narrative events in order to allow them to connect to the decisions and feel the accomplishment of completing the narrative task. World building is the foundation of any story. It creates coherency across all aspects of a game and sets the guiding principles and rules on what makes the game world work. The research into set design came from looking into similar techniques as environmental storytelling, but in different media. It shows that every object in a set should have a purpose, as there is limited resources and space in film and stage productions. Finally, some research into environmental storytelling was conducted. This showed that as a technique, it is widely used within games and world building, as it helps create a sense of environment within game levels. The artifact for this dissertation was created in collaboration with Vision Fountain for their exhibition Wales A Home from Home. Vision Fountain provided the story that acts as the basis for this artifact. The story was a real history of Eva Gabor and her escape from Germany to avoid Nazi persecution during World War II. The plans for the artifact was to create a game with 2 levels, one that displayed the story through text boxes and one that used environmental storytelling. To allow for a detailed game level to be created within the project's timeframe, the setting of the level was a living room in a terrace house. The setting was designed to mimic the look of Eva's own house from the pictures Vision Fountain had sent. I will now demonstrate the artifact. The artifact was created in Unity. It is comprised of 3 scenes. The first scene is the introductory scene. This displays the project title and the start button. The logic behind the button randomly picks between 1 or 2 and then opens a corresponding scene. This is so the distribution of players is even between the levels. The layout of both levels is exactly the same. A table is placed in the centre of the level to force the players to walk around the room in the same direction. This is because the information is laid out in the room in chronological order. This order moves in an anti-clockwise direction starting at the door. When launching both scenes, the information on how to play the game is first displayed. For the environmental level, a modular interaction system was created. This creates an interface that is called when a player presses E. If an object the player is looking at has an interactability, it is then called. This is used in both the camera switch script and in the exit level script. When playing this level, you can walk around, look at the objects in the room, and press E for them to come up. When interacting with objects in the environmental level, the player is disabled, and the camera is switched to a camera that is zoomed in on the object. This also activates a canvas with a text excerpt on it that states what the player is looking at. And as you can see, this works in all aspects of the room, and all things can be interacted with multiple times. In the control level, 5 trigger areas are set up in the room. These follow the same chronological order as the objects do. When a player enters a trigger area, a black canvas pops up, displaying a section of either the story. This is done in the play cutscenes script. Within the cutscene, the player is also disabled. This is so that after exiting the cutscene, the player has not moved. This is the control level at work. As you move forward, black boxes appear around the room. This happens in all 5 places. Each of the texts are different. The pictures and things around the room are still the same, for the most part, but you cannot interact with them. The only different picture in the room is the map. That is because this map does not say the specific place names of the areas on Eva's journey. For both levels, you exit by interacting with the door. This would cause the application to quit. To gather data for this project, participants were asked to play through the artifact and answer a short questionnaire afterwards. The questionnaire aimed to test their recall, starting with more broad questions to see passive recall, and moving on to more specific questions to then see if prompting could achieve better recall results. Through participant testing, there was a total of 22 results that were acquired. 13 people played the environmental level and 9 people played the control level. All data was codified to give each result a total score. Overall, the testing showed that players of the environmental level had a less consistent ability to recall information, but had the potential to pick up on information that the control level participants did not. The most common data for both sets of participants to remember was the name of the person the story was about and where they originated from. The results of this project can help game designers to focus on how they are presenting story to players. Based on the results, it's recommended for story to be presented to the player in multiple ways in order to convey the most information. This dissertation opens up the area of game design to more academic research, as it can be used as a starting point to inspire more research. Further research can be conducted on larger sample sizes, on different genres of game, and relate player enjoyment to how the information is presented. One of the main issues with the results in this project is the limited quantity. Due to the time frame, only 22 results were gathered. This means the results may not be indicative to the gaming community as a whole. Also, the method of data collection was through convenience sampling. This may have led to biases within the data, as a majority of the participants were between the ages of 18 and 25, as well as most of them having been regular gamers. Overall, this research meets its aim of being a starting point for further research into the subject of game design and environmental storytelling. It also still provides useful data on how much players can learn from environmental storytelling and hopefully can aid game designers. Here are the references that I've used throughout this PowerPoint. Thank you for listening.